Hey everyone, and welcome to the conversation series where we are breaking down the boundaries and wellness industry for our body, our mind, and our soul. I'm so happy to be talking to you today all about some of the connections I've made in the different industries I've worked in, and also as just a human and what we can learn from these different industries. You might already know that I have worked in the fitness, the yoga, and the dance industry for quite some time now. And these industries have so much overlap to them. And I think you'll relate to them, even if you've just been a participant in one of those industries. I think a lot of us can draw connections from different areas of our life. And all of a sudden, as you formulate what makes you, you really think about what parts of these different aspects have common attraction points for you that make them things you want to do and experience. That's a lot of thinking. Let's dive right into it. So I got my start in the movement industry via yoga. And in a previous solo episode, I kind of talk about my earliest understandings of yoga, my first experiences on the job, thank you, NC State, and really dive into the fact that I was very much not a super advanced practitioner before I started yoga. Go listen to the episode with me and Chloe. We talk all about how us as teachers are just normal humans dealing with worthiness, dealing with planning and the stress and wondering if we're going to be good teachers. And so as I started my movement journey being in the yoga industry, it obviously was very important that I marry a lot of body and mindfulness immediately and understand that as a career move in the yoga world, I'm going to have to really understand those two things and how they fit together and also why they fit together for me personally. So as I moved forward, I then started working more as a dance instructor. And I worked primarily with children. Now, some of my favorite age groups were probably 8 to 14. That's kind of like, I love that middle school age that like you're really trying to figure out who you are and you're a kid, but you're like turning into a teenager. It's kind of a tumultuous time. And I realized that even though I was teaching technical skills in the dance world, obviously the music is emotional. Obviously, there's a lot of emotion behind it. So therefore, there's mental stuff behind it. And I really found myself pulling a lot of useful concepts from yoga into the dance studio. Even if I had previously used those yoga concepts with adults, they were funneling down in a very appropriate way for children. I also worked with adults in the dance industry, teenagers, bitty babies, like 2, so cute. But, I realized that my favorite thing about those two industries were simply letting others believe that they were worthy to learn, that they deserve to do cool things with their body and trust their mind to guide them. So some of my favorite dance classes were not the most advanced students. They were students who just learned to believe in themselves. And it was such a privilege for me to get to hold space for adults and children alike throughout my career to really find themselves, to learn how to trust themselves. And this is all of a sudden a super common theme right up until now in my career. I mean, I have kind of re-taglined myself on Instagram as holding space for others to move closer and closer to their wisdom. Like that is what I'd love to do. The modalities I use to do them have been varied: fitness, yoga, dance. So as I've continued along in my career, I've noticed how often the lessons from yoga are a part of what I need to do and give in dance. And the lessons from dance really aid in how I do and give yoga. So for example, a good example from yoga to dance would be learning how to modify and make adjustments in your body. We really, really appreciate when people do this in yoga classes, even though it's tough to learn how to modify and just take a second and listen to your body. But in the dance world, because technical prowess and virtuosity is so important, as a kid, that lesson is like super duper important. How do you listen to your body? What is my body telling me? So trying to give kids that lesson is really I mean, it's certainly challenging, but it's mostly just amazing to witness. And watching kids and young adults figure out that they're valuable and worthy and they can make decisions that serve themselves is amazing. We are such tribal people. We want to do what's best for the group. We want to follow the rules. These are some of like humankind's just natural tendencies in some way. Even if you think you're a rebellious person, you are still rebelling in relation to those aspects. So to try to tell, let's say, a 12-year-old that if her ankle hurts, she doesn't have to listen to me. And she doesn't have to do what everyone else is doing. And she can do something different that makes her body feel better and allows her to heal. That is a huge concept. Grown-ups have trouble with that. I have trouble with that. So it's really, really special. And I would ask you to examine in your life where you can trust yourself more. Because as you give yourself the opportunity to trust yourself more and more and more, you start to listen to your intuition when it's like, do that, don't do that. Think about this, don't think about that. Go talk to them, don't talk to them. And all of that information is being pulled from this well of wisdom that you have within you. So this is my favorite thing to teach. So really, I'm not a dance instructor or a yoga instructor. I'm a teacher and someone who holds space for others to learn about themselves. And that's really cool. And it took me a long time to figure that out. I knew early that like I loved helping, women to feel beautiful in ballet class, or I liked how I could help people become stronger in fitness class and reach their full potential and feel good about themselves. But to really try to evaluate that on a soul level is a little bit different. So it really took my own digging to really understand what I think about the mind, body, soul connection and how these different modalities really served me, not just as the teacher, but as someone who's just in the industries and someone who is also a practitioner of all of these modalities. So I not only teach these modalities, but I enjoy doing them myself, as most of us do. So I want to first talk to you guys. This is going to be kind of an emotional conversation. So I want to talk to you guys first objectively to talk about the chakra system. Even if you are not super into the Vedic tradition or you're not really have a full grasp of what the chakras are, I want you to think about the system as just attaching emotional value to physical value. So, and I'll go deeper in a sec for my like big chakra fans, but for those of you who are brand new or a little bit skeptical, I want you to think about how when you're really, really excited, you get butterflies in your stomach, or it feels like your chest is just like going to explode with joy. This is a feeling and a feeling that's in your mind and your body. It's an emotion and a symptom. When you are really stressed about trying to give information or tell someone something, you might go like this and be like, man, I just really don't like your boyfriend, like whatever. You touch your neck, you have a physical reaction to an emotion you're having, or you have a really big test or interview coming up. You are super stressed. This has to go perfectly. You feel so anxious. You feel like bad things might happen if you don't do well. You feel unsafe. That's what that is at its root. And you all of a sudden have diarrhea. An upset tummy because you feel so anxious. This is a lot. This is a lot to think about, but it's real. I think we can all acknowledge emotional factors influence our physical body. Emotional values, physical values meet somewhere in the middle. So I realized, no, let's do our objective rundown. Okay, let's pretend we're a baby and we're growing up. We start with our root chakra, number 1. And this chakra is all about safety. It's about being grounded. So we find this as young children in our immediate nuclear family, our little tribe, and often our bigger tribe, our bigger family, or who takes care of us. We then start to build relationships with people, and we feel more or less attached to certain kinds of people. Babies trust or don't trust pretty interestingly and intuitively. And maybe not you're an infant now, but you're like a toddler. So the second chakra, the sacral chakra, is all about creativity and what you can create. So things you can create related to the chakra include relationships. It's a big one. Sexuality, money and finances, how you create wealth and abundance is also in this center. And so, some of these are age appropriate to our little imaginary toddler, but some of them continue to build, obviously, as you become more mature. So the third chakra is in our diaphragm, solar plexus, upper abdomen area. And this really governs our self-esteem and our power. So when we feel empowered versus not empowered. So imagine that you are now like 3 to 5 years old and you are feeling really disempowered because you can't do blank, you have a tantrum. Is that feeling of being so out of control of your situation? This is like the time. And as an adult, that probably manifests itself in like feels like the wind got knocked out of you when something really bad comes in and you have no power over it. If someone is really impacting your self-esteem, you might literally have like a gut pain or sensation. Like if someone just looks at you and says something really mean, like you're disgusting. Ooh, that's like a sucker punch right here, solar plexus. And so we can think about it as being our power center, our self-esteem, and how we associate what makes us have good self-esteem and empowerment. And I want to be really clear that being powerful is not becoming so big and bossy and bold that you run over other people. When I talk about being a powerful person, I mean being empowered in a way that is balanced and loving to yourself and others, but you are really owning what you have control over. Perfect segue. We have our heart chakra. And number 4. So it's all about love and affection and how and when you think about self-esteem, as you, let's say, hit elementary age, you really start to decide, like, am I a gross person? Am I a good person? Am I a bad person? Am I a bad kid? Am I naughty? Is everyone always telling me that I'm a naughty kid or I talk too much? Or am I a really good child who does all their homework? Like self-esteem is building, right? We're still moving up the kid system. And then we think about love. And as we get older into our adolescence or teens, you might think about where you love someone, how you learn to like have a crush or love others. Obviously, as you become a more adult, that becomes romantic or sexual or more long-term partnerships. But that self-love is hard to talk about because we talk about self-love so much. So I want to back you up and say, if self-love feels overwhelming, just think of it as being gentle with yourself or being respectful to yourself. And we all know that we cannot give other people those things unless we feel them in ourselves first. Our 5th chakra is our throat chakra. It is all about willpower and truth. So what do you think is truthful and are you free to say it? So it is not just speaking your truth so constantly that you are just telling everyone all your thoughts all the time. I have a bit of an addiction to that. This is a healthy way, like the conversation series of me talking about my thoughts. But for example, when I get home from a long day, running my mouth to try to blow off steam and venting is something I have to work on. And when you are balanced in this throat chakra space, you are able to communicate in a way that is also not only good for others, but good for yourself. So I don't need to rely on me. I don't need to rely on myself telling other people things for it to be true. I just know that thing is true. I know I had a hard day. Now, it's okay to still share with your partners. I will always need Paul to bounce things off of. But really trusting your own voice and your own truth, and then being able to communicate that effectively, throat chakra. We then go to the third eye. This is all about your mental state. It's all about your mindfulness. Like, what are your thoughts? The thing is, your thoughts create patterns in your mind, and patterns and repetitive thoughts become opinions that become beliefs that in your mind become true. Your beliefs are just your beliefs. They're not inherently true. And I know that might feel upsetting or dismissive of your personal beliefs, but I believe that we really don't know any truth entirely, but we have to decide what we believe in. It's important to know that you can repattern what you believe in by changing your thoughts, just like how changing your actions will create different habits. For example, if you are quitting smoking and you feel like you need something else to do with your hands, you're creating a new pattern. Instead of doing this, you're creating a new pattern. And I think that that's a good way to explain physical repatterning, but you can do that with your thoughts too. It's hard. I'm not saying any of this is easy. And then we have our seventh chakra, our crown chakra, and that is all about how you feel connected to your greater purpose and your spirituality. I firmly believe that everyone is inherently spiritual. Even if you don't believe in a traditional religious God, I bet you believe that there's some kind of universal power of sorts. So this could be Mother Earth, Gaia, God, from any religion. It could also just be like universal energy. It could be just the goodness of mankind. And so I talk about this as source. It is the source of the higher power thing you believe in. Doesn't mean you have to believe in it in any particular way. It's source. It's source energy. So that is the chakra system. Now, it's important to know that all of those chakras kind of drip down and influence each other. So, for example, if you are really working on your truth and speaking and communicating in a way that serves you well, you'll probably also do some work in your self-esteem center, your solar plexus chakra, because you need to decide what makes you valuable and decide that you're valuable even if you don't constantly have to share and tell. That's one for me. Or you might find that as you work on this chakra, it really starts to reevaluate who you connect to and why. So if you're always feeling obligated to share something with a certain person, you need to decide if that relationship creation between the two of you is a good one or not. We could go on forever on these things, but I found that in the yoga industry, we talk mostly about mind and self-love and root chakra. So that would be 1, 4, 5. And this is because they are great ways to connect the physical and mental aspects. Be grounded, lay on the floor. Love your body, treat yourself well. Treat yourself to yoga class. Control your thoughts in meditation, settle the mind. In dance, we do more creation, so second chakra work. We do a lot of work by accident on that solar plexus, self-esteem. Do I feel good about myself? Am I good enough? That's a constant issue in the dance world, especially if you're in the competition world. You are good enough. And yeah, I think those two really just are really, really pushed hard. And then obviously root chakra, because you're in a very specific experience, not because you need to be grounded necessarily, though you should, but because you're in this kind of like unique tribe of the dance studio. So as I've watched my students in all the modalities that I've ever taught, these come up time and time again in the form of a chakra system. And while I don't really want to share student stories today, I can speak to you through my own stories. So when I was a dancer at NC State, I was also playing rugby and lacrosse and doing a full course load. And I was coming off of being very addicted to running because I went to college for running and at University of Tampa, which is really amazing, but I had an injury and I had to quit, and that was really hard on me. So I replaced the intensity of running with like all the other stuff. And luckily they were healthy things, but it was a lot. It was two high intensity sports and dance. Luckily, dance really taught me how to love myself. So even though I was probably very ungrounded in my first chakra, I was figuring out what I liked about myself. So very much self-esteem and self-love. And that was really great. And I was also expressing myself through movement. So very much in throat chakra. So that was really great, but I was not grounded because I had grounded myself in the idea that I am on a team. The only way I can feel safe is if I am on that team and doing a good job and busting my ass to do a good job. And that was really tough. So when I left running, I felt really unsafe. I didn't know where I belonged. I didn't know my purpose. My mind was like, what's happening? And so I replaced it quickly with sports and dance. Thank God dance fosters so much self-love. But all of a sudden, the injury that took me out of running didn't exist. Now I was still doing too much. But all of a sudden, the things that I was choosing, like lacrosse and rugby, and especially dance, gave me freedom for expansion and just trying new things. And it made me think for the first time, wow, if I'm not a runner, I'm still a really cool person. And it sounds really corny, but it's true. If you've ever been really attached your identity to one thing or one activity, it is hard when that activity has to end. You have to redecide who you are. And the best way to do that is to try new things. It doesn't have to be big things, it could be small things, but just try new things. So I learned how to really trust myself differently. Guess what happened? I didn't have the injury anymore. My injury went away. Now, obviously, running puts a different amount of stress on your body as those other sports, but I was still playing rugby, like the most intensity physical ouchy sport there is, and I wasn't having knee pain. It was patellotendinitis that took me out of running. So all of a sudden, as I got my mindset right and I felt more balanced as a human, my body responded, and that was really cool. I want to tell you about a not so cool time. When I was at a full-time dance studio, loved that job, absolutely amazing. I had a desk, I worked all day, I danced all night. It was like the best. Like it was such a great time. But I was way overworked, and I put that on myself. I take full responsibility. I did not know how to say no. Throat chakra. I did not know how to say no. I said yes to everything because once again, I thought intensity equaled value, just like my athlete brain. So I was constantly giving away my power, constantly just yes, 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 getting just so not communicating well and speaking my truth. And there was one season of dance I got strep throat 3 times. And Paul and I were dating at the time, and I was like, Paul is my fiance, by the way. You might know that. We're getting married. But I was like, why do I keep getting sick? And I made Paul go to the doctor and get a strep test because I was like, you're the carrier. You have to be the asymptomatic carrier giving me strep. But he wasn't. And, obviously being run down in general makes you more susceptible to illness. I think some of those illnesses are exacerbated by certain emotional aspects. That's it. I still believe in science. I still believe in general biology. But I do think that there is a natural linking of communication issues, truth issues, and my throat symptoms. It was intense. I was so sick. And then right before the pandemic happened, so kind of the year prior to that, I was feeling very unsettled. I loved my job. And if you know me from this last job, know that it was the best thing that ever happened to me working there. But I could feel my life shifting, and I knew that I needed to make a change. So I needed to unplant myself and move myself somewhere else, root chakra. I also really needed to adjust my self-esteem. I felt like my whole worth was being tied to this job. And that carried me through a lot of hard times. I am thankful for that survival method. I'm thankful for that job. But as I became stronger overall, I didn't need to rely on it so much. And that made me feel bad. I felt really guilty for not being so intense about my job. I had to kind of grieve the idea that I can just like my job. I don't have to be obsessed with it or find so much personal value in it. It can just be a great job. But I really, really struggled with this concept endlessly. So we talked about root chakra, solar plexus chakra, and right in between there is, of course, our creation and our sacral chakra. So I'm sure that's included in this, but I'm going to just talk about the self-esteem aspect and the rootedness aspect. I put so much value into this job, and I really needed to figure out who I was as a person. First of all, the pandemic just took my job away, which was horrific. But prior to that, I'm going to tell you about 2 things that happened to me medically. I started to just have incredible stomach problems, like chronic stomach problems. I went to my doctor and I said, I can't, I'm so bloated. I don't feel good. I'm tired all the time. I cannot drink more water. I cannot eat more leafy greens. I am doing all the things. Doctor, please help me. I don't know what is wrong. So she felt my stomach. It didn't appear like I was overly bloated or like there was any blockages or anything like that. And she was like, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and send you to a GI specialist. And because of family history, I was going to have to get a colonoscopy before the age of 30, which I know is like young, but it's important, especially with a family history. And I was like, yeah, okay, that sounds great. Like scary, but yeah, I should probably go get that checked out finally. And she went ahead and did a blood test. And my vitamin D levels turned out to be a 4. Now, I don't remember the exact scale for vitamin D. I think it's like in the middle, like 40 to 60 out of 100 is what the levels should be in whatever unit that they measure it. And mine was so low. Guys, if you look at photos of me from that summer, I was pale in the summer. I tanned really well. I look kind of pasty on Zoom, but I was so pale. I was so exhausted. I went out with Paul downtown to go get like a drink and do a festival and have a nice time. I had to sit down on a planter on the side of the road, like downtown, and sit there and rest to catch my breath before I could keep going. I was a mess. And I did not know my vitamin D was this low. Vitamin D affects a lot of things. It can make you feel low vitamin D can make you feel very depressed. Vitamin D stuff can also be related to tummy problems. And I firmly believe that the combination of more scientific and biological evidence that I was dealing with, plus the fact that I was so ungrounded and my self-esteem was being so triggered and challenged, that this manifested itself in my gut. Because my stomach problems were the first thing that alerted me to something is wrong with my body. And that vitamin D level, I read some like medical journals after I figured out what was happening to me. And it was the kind of levels that people are so weakened that they just go to the hospital. And so I couldn't believe I had strayed so far from being a good listener to my body. And I felt guilty about it. I really had to like give myself some time to be like, I am still a good person. I am still a good mindful yogi and human that takes care of myself. I couldn't believe that I take care of other people's children and teach them how to be good to their bodies. And I wasn't even being good to myself. So I had to really process that. And I got on my vitamin D supplements. It started to get better and things are good. But my gut area really told me that something was wrong. So I go in for my colonoscopy and I was terrified because of my family history. To be honest, I wasn't terrified. I say terrified because I feel like that's what I should say. I have been very realistic about the fact that my family history might make me more predisposed to having cancer in my digestive tract. We'll get more specific another time, one thing at a time. This is a lot to talk about. But I knew that like it would be okay. I knew what the plan was if for some reason I came back with you know, polyps or malignancies or anything in between. So I go into my colonoscopy and I wake up and I'm like very drowsy. Paul's there and my doctor is there. And they had found a cancerous tumor and they removed it. And I just thought to myself, how could I not have known there was something wrong with my body? But it wasn't true. I knew there was something wrong with my body. I didn't trust that what I knew was true. And so I felt like saying, damn, how did I not know? But also, how did I not trust myself? There were signs. And I want you to know that you don't always know when something's wrong with your body. And if you've never known something's wrong with your body, you should not feel bad. This is not me winning or losing at the game of sensing things in my body. But I had noticed that there was weird things happening to me and I didn't do anything about it because I didn't trust and believe in myself. I didn't have the self-esteem to say, yeah, this is real. I didn't communicate to myself, my own truth, or to others that something was off. And that would make me take a really hard look at what was going on. Wow, this got dark really fast. I'm gonna tell you one more story. I was dating someone and not a nice person. And while we were together, I had gotten an IUD put in and I didn't want it. I thought I wanted it, but I really didn't want it. To me, my womb was like my most sacred part. Like I didn't want something sitting in there. And for those of you who want an IUD, I do still recommend them. They're freaking awesome. But somewhere deep in my soul, I just thought it was a bad idea for me, but I did it. I got it. We broke up. A few months later, I started having this pain. And it wasn't like an ouch pain. It was like something's off pain. And also you have to check for an IUD. And when I was checking for it manually, like with your hands, I didn't feel what I normally felt. Eventually, we realized that my IUD was lodged in my cervix, and we had to get it taken out. Like I had to be put under. Now, if you want an IUD, please don't let my horror story scare you. I still recommend them. I had a great time when it was working out. And that failure is very, very low, the chances. But I believe that I broke up with this horrible man that I had a horrible experience with. And as I was cutting ties and also rebuilding ties with Paul, second chakra, relationships, sexuality, that my body said, get the fuck out to my IUD. And literally my reproductive system went, this is not for you anymore. And as I expelled this ex from my life, or was working on it because there was some like drama after and some contact and some, it was a big challenge, and we'll talk about it another time. But as I was pushing him out and adding someone really amazing, Paul, even though there was quite a bit of time between those two relationships, my body was responding accordingly and knew that I did not want that IUD in me. And I only got it because that previous ex pushed me to, and literally was saying out. And I think you can't create meaning from all the things that happen in your body, because you'll either go nuts or start blaming yourself when things go wrong. But I do think we can glean wisdom and understanding. So I'm telling you all of this because in every stage of my life that has been big, important, or valuable, I've been able to link it back to the chakra system. It has happened as a dancer. It has happened as a college athlete. It has happened as a dance teacher. It happened while I was a yoga teacher too. I was a yoga teacher through all of this. And the best thing I can offer you is to trust yourself. If for some reason you think you have a problem and you go to the doctor and they say you're fine, the worst that happened is you wasted a little time and money. But at least you trusted yourself and you practiced that self-trust. And maybe you decide you need to get a second opinion. Maybe you decide you're done. Your doctor is the authority. And I think that's amazing. But as you give yourself permission to try trusting yourself, even in small ways, you will become more and more confident and more confident in your intuition. And this is the best lesson that I ever received as a practitioner or a teacher in any modality I've ever taught for the past 10 years. It is a hard lesson for me to learn, even though I preach it to others, that you have to trust yourself. The chakra system may be a really great way to lean into that understanding and trust as kind of like a vocabulary work and framework for you to understand. And if you are not so moved by the chakra system, then I would just really think about how your emotions and your physical symptoms are linked every day. There is a connection. And I don't give you a lot of like 100% truths because I want you to believe whatever you believe. I'll believe whatever I believe. But I think it is human nature and it is scientific biology that emotional well-being and physical well-being are 100% linked. It is just dependent on how you link them and the why behind that we can all talk about, disagree with, agree with, all the stuff. So this was kind of a lot. And I know you know what, it feels like too much about me. I feel like I did too much storytelling, or maybe it was like too vulnerable, but I don't care. I'm going to let that worthiness issue go and just say that I hope that any of my stories that I've talked about gives you some strength to tell your own story, or at least believe your own story in you. You feel safe in your environment. You create things that make you happy. Your self-esteem is only decided by you. You love and appreciate where you're at. You are truthful and you have willpower that is true and genuine to you. You know that your mind is a good place, even if you have challenging thoughts sometimes, that you are inherently good. and that you are worthy of goodness. You are connected to something big. I don't know what it is for you, but it is big and it is meant for you. You are protected and you are amazing. Okay. Love fest. Really. I hope you connect with me on Instagram, email, website, whatever you want. It's emotionallyavailable.com for Instagram. If this conversation brought up feelings in you, leave a comment. Throw your thoughts to me on a DM. Send me an email, Dianna@emotionallyavailable.com. You can find it at diannabaptista.com. And just let me know how you're doing. This is a big topic. And if it's leaving me feeling pretty intense feelings, I have a feeling it might have triggered some of those things in you too. So if you need someone to walk with you or just to share and be a sounding board, I encourage you to reach out. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful day.